Yes, Assalamualaikum, and welcome back to ESC for Security, Energy Systems and Environment. So today, the topic is basically about energy policy and government strategy. Okay? And this is actually coming towards the end of the course. So congratulations to you all for managing up until this point. Okay, so today's class is mostly about, we're going to look at the policy. Yeah, and if we look at the learning outcome, we will discuss the establishment of government-owned companies involved in the supply of energy to the people. So if at the top of your head, I hope you can already think of some companies, TLC, that are actually involved in terms of energy. Okay, and we are going to have a look at that in a little bit of time. Okay, but basically, what is also important in this topic is that you need to be aware of there are various policies developed by the government that is actually linked to electricity, towards energy. And what this entails is that from the policy, okay, that's where a lot of the development in terms of energy systems, new projects, that's where it comes from. It's based on the government policy. So we're going to have a look at the different setups that has been done by the government in Malaysia. And I hope you can understand the implications of having such policies in, at the top level, right? So basically, if you just look here, these are all, so we have a lot of companies in Malaysia. Okay? But if you look here, this is actually examples of a GLC. And when we talk about government-linked companies, I think a lot of people know about Khazanah Nasional, a lot of people know about PNB, MAS, these are some of the examples. Okay, so these companies actually have are linked with the government. So it means that although they are a company, they are towards commercial, okay, but the government does have a share in the company. So GLC and GLIC, I here just means that it's an investment. So government-linked investment companies. Okay? And with this ones, it's more about PNB, Kabung Haji, so those are GLIC. Okay. So are all of them related to energy? Not all. For example, the easiest, I think you would see this one lah. PNB is definitely very much related to electricity. We also have Petronas. Petronas is the sole company that actually has the right to the crude oil in Malaysia. Okay, so they are the ones who we're talking about energy. As I mentioned before, we are not really talking about electricity. There is also oil, petroleum. And those are also some of the resources that is used to generate energy. Okay, so if you just look at things in general, the energy policies in Malaysia, we actually started with Petroleum Development Act in 1974 and have the National Petroleum Policy in 1975. So each of these policies or acts, it has its own, it has something that it brings to the country. For example, in 1974, it's when the country basically are saying, okay, look, this is an act. So whoever is going to develop the petroleum, because petroleum is one of our natural resources in Malaysia, it's a very big resource, and it also has a lot of money, right? So this is basically a very valuable resource in Malaysia. So these acts are really, really important. So it follows in the next year, 1975, where the National Petroleum Policy, it actually is when Petronas was, we can diwatakan lah. And so it's when it is actually existed. Okay. And then we have National Energy Policy, 1979, and we have a lot more actually, National Depletion Policy, for fuel policy. So all of these policies has its own areas or own policies that they bring to the country. It depends also, if you see here, for fuel policy in 1981, and then it follows like 20 years after, from 4 it becomes 5. So this is basically only talking about what are the resources, the energy resources that is used as fuel to generate electricity in Malaysia. So before it was 4, and in 2001 it was increased to 5, and this included the knowledge that certain fuels has its own environmental concern. Okay, so they introduced the 5th fuel, yeah, to increase the sustainability of the existing fuels for energy production in Malaysia. Okay, and it follows after that, we have the National Renewable Energy Policy and Action Plan in 2009. We have the Renewable Energy Act in 2011. Okay, and we also have the NEEAP, National Energy Efficiency Action Plan 2016 to 2025. Okay, so a lot of this, if you have ever, if you are later on, if you are working in, let's say, in a company, a lot of this might be very relevant in NEEAP, because in NEEAP there's a lot of benefits, I can say, that companies can actually apply for, or they can actually get some rebate, yeah, in terms of specific systems that they can utilize. And when we're talking about systems, these are renewable systems. Most of it at this point is solar, but there's also things like cogeneration, anaerobic digestion, so on and so forth. So the government is really pushing for our industry, yeah, to change their current energy consumption and try to utilize more renewable and sustainable forms of energy in their activities. Okay. Now, Paris Agreement. Right? If you search the Paris Agreement, this is in COP15, Copenhagen. Okay, so the then Prime Minister had already mentioned or set Malaysia's commitment, right, in 2015, where we want to voluntarily reduction of carbon emission up to 40%, okay, by the year 2020 compared to 2005 level. Okay, voluntary here. Yeah, and this, if you ever is interested to see the in more detail, yeah, what we had submitted, because Malaysia had signed the Paris Agreement. So we actually have made the commitment, and we have to follow that as a country. So if you can look up UNFCCC, FCCC. So this is actually Malaysia had to submit a report, yeah, to the UNFCCC detailing the carbon reduction that the country as a whole had managed to fulfill. Okay, so this was in COP15. In COP20 Paris, okay, we had reiterated that commitment. So we are saying that Malaysia is aiming to cut greenhouse gas emission. Okay, so voluntary 35% from 2005 level by 2030. Okay, and with international support that could increase to 45%. So what do they mean with international support? So if you guys know, okay, when we talk about climate change, this is something that is a global concern. Okay, and a lot of the developed countries, negara-negara maju, we know it is also related to their state of the country. So they have a lot of money. Okay, I'm really putting this in very general terms. Okay, they are advanced, so they have a lot of more funds compared to the less developed nation. Okay, so in less developed nations, a lot of the countries' expenses are used towards development because a lot of the country are still behind in some elements or another. Okay, so they cannot spend a lot in terms of climate change. Yeah, and these initiatives actually require a lot of funds, a lot of capital. That's where the less developed countries are struggling. So with support, meaning that with financial support, yeah, from these developed countries, Malaysia, and also other countries lah, those that are developing countries, we can actually go beyond than what was we had aspired for. Okay, and this line of thought is something that is currently happening nowadays. So we have the US, we have the UN actually supporting or funding many different initiatives into reduction of carbon, okay, in all of these developing countries. Yeah. So you can imagine that actually there's a lot of funds out there, okay, that may be available to some countries, you know, when they want to do any of these initiatives. Okay, so please bear that in mind. Okay, when we talk about carbon reduction, no one country can actually do everything alone. Okay, we as a global community all have to work together to achieve one same goal. Yeah, we want to protect the earth. We want to reduce the impacts of climate change. Okay, and you cannot say that because you had produced carbon in the beginning, now you cannot actually blame us for, you know, trying to catch up with our development and also at the same time releasing carbon. So that conversation is happening, yeah, but we have to move beyond that. We have to move into actually, you know, solving the problem, right? Now, if you ever heard about Malaysia Plan, ya, ataupun in Malay, Rancangan Malaysia 10 ke 11 ke 12, so now we are actually in the 12th Malaysia Plan. Yeah, but previously, let me just give you an idea. In the 11th Malaysia Plan, which actually covers 2016 to 2020, okay, S here indicates a strategic thrust, okay, and what was in each of the Malaysia Plan, there's actually energy is a very, very relevant issue. Okay, so each of the Malaysia plan had targeted energy as one of its pillars. Okay, and here we are talking about energy. Okay, so actually there's 5 strategic paths. One is strengthening stakeholder coordination and collaboration in the energy sector. Strategic path 2, ensuring the security of supply and reliability for the oil and gas subsector within a market-based approach. Strategic thrust 3, enabling the growth in the oil and gas subsector. As 4, managing supply diversity for security of electricity subsector. And as 5, improving the sustainability, efficiency, and reliability of the electricity subsector. So we have actually, so these are the policies or the items indicated in the 11th Malaysia Plan. And we can see that these are in the plan, but there's actually some very specific action plans that was developed in line with all of this. You can see there's a lot of talks, there's a lot of collaboration between different stakeholders during this time. We also have tried to increase the knowledge about sustainability. And that comes into the form of many, many different programs that involves different stakeholders. We look at the supply diversity. And not only do we only rely on petroleum, now we look at biodiesel, and because Malaysia is one of the largest producers of palm oil, we know that palm oil, palm waste is abundant in the country. And that's when we talk about biodiesel, we have B10 now, but back then they put it at B5 with the vision of it one day achieving B30. I hope you guys still remember what I mean by B5 and B30, so on and so forth. That is the mix of biodiesel plus the normal diesel from petroleum, right? And all of this, they actually work together. Now we, through the government, goes down to the agencies, to the ministries, and all of these ministries and agencies have their own strategic plan of how they can achieve the goals that were set in this Malaysia plan, right? So just back then, if you just look at this one, 11 Malaysia plans. So before that, the total installed capacity in 2014 was 243 megawatt. Okay, that was before RMK 11. Okay, and these are the renewables, total installed renewables capacity. Okay, and after RMK 11, in 2020, we can see there's a very large increase. Okay, that's basically how this works. During that time, during the 5-year duration, okay, the government will set aside some amount of money, some amount of funds that the country will move into. So you develop more. Each of these, and you can see there's a lot of increase for all of them. So before only depend totally on solar photovoltaics, now it's actually biomass that is the highest mix. Okay, so we can see this, what is the direct impact of having these policies going top down, okay, from the government to what is happening at the grassroots, right? So in the 12th Malaysia Plan, which is now actually, you see here, 2021 to 2025, and a prosperous, inclusive, sustainable Malaysia. So if you ever open up this report or this plan lah, RMK 12, there's a lot of information about sustainable development because we are now moving into trying to look into sustainability of various processes, various operations. We now know there is a very pressing need for us to reduce carbon. Okay, and the PM had already mentioned when they were presenting the 12 Malaysia plan. So the commitment was to have Malaysia being a carbon neutral country as early as 2050. So that is the aspiration, okay, of our country. So we need to achieve carbon neutral as early as 2050. Okay. And there's a lot of approaches that has been highlighted in the 12 Malaysia plan, but some of it is we are now phasing out coal-fired power plants. We are now going into gas power plants. Yeah, and in the I can't remember whether it's in the report or not. Yeah, but it was also mentioned that there will be no new coal-fired power plants being built anymore. Okay, so we have the ones that are existing, but we are phasing that out with the gas power plants, which are much, much cleaner. Okay. And then there will also be a new national energy policy that will be announced. So they were saying in 2022, but now we are in June, so and still haven't yet come out. Yeah, so let's just wait and see. But basically, in the new national energy policy, first is about the generation of energy, of renewable energy. Okay, so we want to increase the capacity of up to 31%. So what this means is that our electricity does not only comes from the power plants anymore. Like before, it was coal-fired power plants. Yeah? So now we are trying to aim for having up to 31%. So this comes from things like hydro, like solar, biomass, the ones that I've presented before. And apart from that, yeah, within the policy, there will also be additional acts related to energy efficiency and conservation. And this is very much related to the consumption of electricity / energy by high intensity consumers in the industrial and commercial sectors. Right? In the 12 Malaysia plan, there is also the inclusion of hydrogen into the RE mix, the renewable energy mix. Yeah, and this is a very, very big move actually, because hydrogen is very clean. Yeah, and you have learned before about hydrogen. It also can be used in fuel cells. Okay, and there's a lot of potential there, actually. And then what is also included in the 12 Malaysia plan is also the government is pushing for more energy efficient vehicles, yeah, electric cars, and also hydrogen cars. So that relates back to here. Okay, so not only in the renewable energy mix, but hydrogen cars is also something that the government is currently looking into. Okay, so if you remember back when we mentioned about the learning outcomes, yeah, and we talk about GLCs, okay, there are a few, well, there's a lot of companies that is related to energy, but today we are only going to focus on a number of them. The first is Petronas. Petronas, or also known as Petroleum Nasional Berhad, is Malaysia's fully integrated oil and gas multinational with proven capabilities in a broad spectrum of the petroleum value chain. Okay, and this is the vision. They want to be the leading oil and gas multinational of choice. And their mission is actually to develop and to develop the petroleum resource whenever it operates, and then they convert these resources into higher value products, okay, that would satisfy the needs of customers and bring benefits to the people. Okay, so these are the brief history. Okay, you all can actually read this. But basically, before 1974, I've mentioned before about oil and gas reserve. So before 1974, there was no one custodian for that. So it's like anyone can come in and they can negotiate and they can say that, okay, I am going to own, I'm going to develop this oil field for you, okay, but you know, you have no control as a country. You will have no control of whatever operation that is being done. Now you only get the money basically based on the contract. So the then Sarawak Chief Minister, Tun Abdul Rahman Yaakob, so he was among those who proposed there must be custodian for this reserve. Like it must be one entity that will be, you know, akan menjaga lah. Basically, people will have to talk to this custodian before they want to develop something. So in 1974, that was the Petroleum Development Act. Okay, and this was passed, which granted rights for Petronas to manage and exploit Malaysia's oil and gas reserve. Okay, and this is when Petronas was officially incorporated. Barulah Petronas ni ada sebenarnya. And the first chairman was Tengku Razali Hamzah, and the first office was located here in Kuala Lumpur. Right. So in 1981, they opened the first petrol station in TTDI. Okay, and the first appraisal well was drilled in the Duyong gas field 200 kilometers off Terengganu coast. Okay, and after that, the development speeds up lah. So there's a lot of things happening, a lot of minefield. So they not only are working in Malaysia, they're also looking outwards, okay, to the region, and lastly, to a global aspiration. All right. So, you know, in 1999, yeah, the then Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, he officially opened the Petronas Twin Towers. Okay, and basically, this I'm just telling you like some of the key milestones lah for Petronas. In 2021, which is fairly recent, I would say, Petronas becomes the world's first to produce LNG from 2 floating facilities. So before this, you would need to have, you cannot have a floating facility to produce LNG, because usually what they have is a platform, okay, that will deal with the drilling, etc. And they will need to, there will be a pipeline to the ground ataupun ke tanah lah, ke tanah besar, because this is in the sea, in the deep sea. Okay, there will be a piping, and all of the refineries will be back on land, not there. Okay, but with these 2 floating facilities, they're floating, then, so they can actually save a lot. Basically, you can actually directly process, okay, the oil that has been drilled. You can immediately process that, and you can actually ship it to the customers. So it's reducing the logistics. Yeah. And this is a very, very groundbreaking lah. So Petronas was the first to do this. Okay, and here, I hope you guys know who this guy is. Lewis Hamilton. He drove for Petronas, and of course Petronas, it undergoes different iterations, and so right now it's with Mercedes lah. Okay, but before kita ada dengan Salva lah, so there's a lot of different, Petronas actually work with different car brands as well. But what I'm saying is Petronas is not only about petroleum. Of course, that is their key business, but because they want to show. Sometimes people ask why Petronas nak masuk, this one. Why? Because we want to show the product that is being developed by Petronas actually has an edge over their competitors. Okay, and as a Malaysian, okay, we should be proud of that. And if you think back about, when I talked to you previously about the economy, the things that we spend on, for us as consumers, if we buy Petronas, okay, I do not have any linkages or affiliation with Petronas. Let me get that clear. So if you buy, for example, as a customer, and you buy Petronas product, okay, actually the money, for a lack of better term, so that actually goes back to the country, because Petronas paid a lot of pays tax lah to Malaysia, to the country. Okay, and this tax money are very, very large sum, and it actually helps the government to, just now when I talk about policies, okay, and policies for 5 years, you will need money for that 5 years. So this is where the tax money plays into account. Okay, you have all these different resources. Okay, you have money. Okay, you have things like exports and imports. All of this is interlinked together. But what it means at the end is that whatever tax that is being paid by all of these companies goes back to you and me. We might not see it. We don't see it in the form of like we bought Petronas. Okay, we fill up our car, okay, at Petronas petrol station, or 70 ringgit, for example. We don't actually get 70 ringgit back to us. But we get things like roads. We have the free medical treatments at government clinics and hospitals, so on and so forth. So things are when before, compared to before, and now I hope you guys have opened your eyes. Okay, to progress as a nation, we have to look at things as a nation, a collective benefit. It's not only about what I myself can get. We have to start thinking about what we, all of us, inclusive, of all people. Tak kisahlah you guys are in urban. So we need to think about those in villages, for example. How about them? They will need the development, okay, to increase their way of life, the quality of life. Okay, so things like that you have to think, right? Of course, there are also controversies if you talk about any companies lah. Any companies actually has their controversies, so you can actually go into the link if you're interested. Okay? And at the same time, if we talk about companies, we cannot run from things like CSR. CSR is corporate social responsibility. So this is where they do a lot of programs, conservation, or things that involve the communities, involve an area, okay, and they try to mitigate some of the problems faced at that area through the company's intervention. Okay. Of course, Petronas also has its challenges. price of crude oil. Right? It's very, very unstable. Okay, when crude oil is at its lowest, yeah, it goes back to the tax that I mentioned just now. Okay, the amount of tax that Petronas will pay will also be low, and it means that the government has less money to spend. Yeah. Politics, of course, because the Petronas is a government-linked company. Okay, and there's a lot of things about subsidies, so on and so forth. Okay, I leave it to you to judge for yourself. Yeah, I'm here just to show, or just to, share with you all of this. Yeah. So apart from Petronas, we also have TNB. TNB is actually the largest electricity utility in Malaysia, okay, and it has presence in Asia and also the rest of the world, not only in Malaysia. Okay. This is the purpose and aspiration, but basically they're saying they want to be the leading provider of sustainable energy solutions. Yeah? And highlight is in Malaysia and internationally. Okay. So brief history. Basically, in 1894 was when electric pumps was first used for mining in Malaya. Back then it was Malaya. And then private supply for street lighting purposes was extended to Rawang town. Okay, 1895, railway stations in Kuala Lumpur received its first electricity supply. Okay, in 1900, Sempami Hydroelectric Power Station in Raub became the first power station in Malaysia. Okay, and in 1949, we have the board, okay, Central Electricity Board. This was established, okay, and it come into operation. So they, as a board, they actually own the whole, all power stations in the country with a generation capacity of 2.28 megawatt. Okay. And at that time, the transmission distribution systems was valued at close to $30 million. Right? So starting from there, because initially the CEB ni, kan masa ni kan we are with British, with the Brits. So a lot of the chair, so a lot of people also on the board was not Malaysian. Okay, they were Britain national. Yeah, and there's a lot of expatriates lah in the board. Yeah, so within 2 years, the country, or rather CEB, and they started to send engineers and students overseas. Okay, and when they come back, these people are the ones who replace the expatriates, right? And in 1964, Raja Sulaiman became the first Malaysian to be appointed to the post of CEB General Manager. So you can imagine this CEB was established in 1949, and almost 15 years after is only when the board was led by a Malaysian. Okay, so 65, CEB was renamed as the National Electricity Board of the State of Malaya, and 1984 capacity. So along all this while, development happens. Okay, and back then it has 224,882 staffs. Back then. And then in 1988, the government decided that the National Electricity Board will be privatized. Okay, so if you guys know, board biasanya dia memang link with government lah. Yeah, but privatization meaning that it becomes a company. So in 1990, TNB was officially proclaimed, okay, as the heir and successor to NEB. So this is NEB, and TNB became a private company. but it is wholly owned by the government. And on the same day, Tan Sri Datuk Haji Dr. Ani bin Arofi was appointed the chairman for TNB. Okay, so as the conclusion, we've talked about the policies and macam-macam cerita lah kan. So basically, there's a lot of challenges lah for energy. We know that there are things like the structure itself, kan, economic growth. We talk about we need constant supply of energy, can, but we need it to be sustainable as well. We need it to we need to utilize existing natural resources, and whatever residues that we can get our hands on, that can actually be used to produce the energy that we need. And all of these things are in place. So what to handle these challenges, we need a very strong policy. Okay? And this policy is needed to achieve these goals, basically. So you want to ensure that you can meet the demands, okay, of the country in terms of energy. Okay? You need it to be secure. Kita tak nak, we don't want it to be like every week there will be electric cuts. That's not it. That is not secure. We want it to be you can depend on the energy that you need every day. Okay? And price. Price is also something that is very much debated. Yeah? And sustainability. So sustainability is definitely something that everyone has to look into. Okay, and I guess that's it from me. Okay, thank you for staying on, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.